In an isolated pocket of far North Queensland, there's evidence of a massive new clearing.
We're really concerned about the out-of-control land clearing in Queensland, and so when we got this report, we immediately got a photographer in the field with drones and taking photos of what was going on.
Managing diverse landscapes, particularly for diverse outcomes, is tricky.
The land is owned by Consolidated Pastoral, a cattle empire with holdings across northern Australia. The company started a large-scale clearing operation at its Rotham Park property around June last year. These images, taken by the Queensland Conservation Council and the Wilderness Society, show the results. More than 3,700 hectares, that's nearly 7,000 football fields, was cleared without any government assessment of the environmental damage, and it was all done within the rules. How can this happen?
Well, because there's loopholes and there's exemptions in the state laws that don't protect for threatened species. There's no proper assessment.
There's a problem. We're not monitoring what we're losing.
The federal government's latest State of the Environment report paints a grim picture of species loss, with continued clearing of native vegetation over the past 5 years. Dr. Ian Cresswell was one of the report's authors.
In Australia, land clearing is most prevalent in Queensland and New South Wales. Queensland by far the largest contributor to land clearing. We do know that the continual fragmentation of habitat and the clearing of habitat has a major impact on the loss of species in any area.
According to a search of the Federal Environment Department's database, the Rotham Park cattle station is the likely habitat of 4 threatened species, and it may be the habitat of the endangered Gouldian finch.
We know that in that area, that this is a habitat that could have grown and sustained a population of Gouldian finch. That possibility is gone now.
The reason why the Rotham Park clearing wasn't required to be assessed lies in the complex interaction between state and federal environmental laws.
The Queensland Government has actually looked at all of that area and categorised it as safe to clear.
This land was originally cleared by a previous owner some 50 years ago, although some of it is more recent regrowth. That means under Queensland law it's given a classification called Category X, which means the landholder doesn't need state approval to chop down the trees.
So it's not the landholder making that decision on their own. They're definitely supported by state government environments departments as well.
And in the absence of any state control, it's up to the landholder to decide whether it's serious enough to refer the matter to the federal government, and it's only required to do so if it will have a significant impact on threatened species.
There's been no consequence for more than 10 years for a landholder in Queensland for not referring land clearing to the federal department.
Across Australia, very few clearing applications are referred. And in fact, one of the problems of the Act is that it doesn't deal with the cumulative impact of multiple sets of clearing.
CPC, the company that owns the land, declined to be interviewed, but provided 7:30 with a written statement.
The recleared land was first cleared in 1972 and represents less than 1% of our land at Rotham Park. The land management work at Rotham Park complies with government regulations and is consistent with our need to manage noxious weeds on the property, as well as our longer-term goal of improving soil quality, improving biodiversity and increasing vegetation cover.
All of those invasive species are actually a huge threat to some of the biodiversity in that area. So in this instance, no, I don't think there was a need for CPC to refer it.
While agriculture is responsible for clearing more land, the impact on threatened species is even greater on Australia's urban fringes.
If we don't act now, it will almost be too late.
Anne Page has been campaigning to stop the clearing of native forest on an old dairy farm south of Brisbane to make way for a new industrial estate. This wildlife fence put up along the forest edge a decade ago, mainly for koalas, is now redundant.
There's no magic fairyland out there. You clear trees, wildlife, fauna dies, biodiversity dies, ecosystem dies. It's a one-way street. There's no going back.
Unlike the cattle property in far north Queensland, land clearing for new buildings generally has to be assessed under federal threatened species laws. That meant the loss of critical koala habitat to make way for the industrial estate had to be offset by planting new trees 40 kilometres away. But offsets are not always a guaranteed success.
It's a mixed bag. Some of them have been useful, but in fact the studies that have looked at offsets in detail have found that many did not live up to their intended purpose.
In my judgment,
the incoming Federal Environment Minister agrees the system of protecting threatened species has failed and has promised new legislation in the new year.
without structural change, we'll be resigning ourselves to another decade of failure without the tools we need to arrest our decline.
Something is wrong. Well, we believe that any regulatory system is best when it goes hand in hand with a positive system as well, that rewards landholders for the good land management and the good environmental management that many farmers are always doing on their farms.
The Queensland Government has commissioned an expert report on why the state continues to have such high levels of tree clearing, with scientists warning we're heading for more extinctions over the next decade.
If we keep on cutting down the areas that we protect to smaller and smaller parcels, and we keep saying we're only going to look after this much and this much, then our threatened species don't have a chance.